Okay, so afternoon, everybody. We are recording this webinar, so we will make an on-demand version available later. Welcome to everybody who's managed to join us. You're very welcome. For those of you that don't know me, my name's Jo Edwards. I'm Managing Director of JE Consulting, and we are a full-service marketing agency serving the accountancy and legal profession. Before we get into the intro, I just would like to introduce Paul Shrimpling from Remarkable Practice. Paul, do you want to just give us an intro?
Sure. Served the accountancy profession for the last 20 years. I can't believe it's 20 years, but I have. Started out and still consider myself a business owner first and a servant to the accountancy profession second. And my focus, as you can perhaps see here, is to help ambitious accountants humanise the numbers. So, Jo, when you suggested the opportunity to get together and chew over a key aspect of every firm, you know, what makes them really successful ones tick and the other ones do okay, but actually undermines what all the others do, it's their ability to recruit and retain great people. And so this is right in my sweet spot, partly because I had 3 years as a recruitment consultant, and I hope you don't hold that against me, but we will touch on that subject before this webinar is out. That's me.
Thanks a lot, Paul. Okay, well, we're scheduled to run for about 45 minutes. We're not going to do a kind of formal presentation, are we, Paul? We decided that we were going to do this as more of a kind of chat. You've obviously got lots of experience working with lots of firms. We work with lots of firms, and recruitment obviously is one of the big issues. Yeah. Because we're keeping this fairly informal, I'd suggest if any of you have got any questions you'd like to put to myself and Paul as we go through, just use the Q&A option on your toolbar, and we'll try and answer them as we go along, or we'll try and get to them at the end. And keep it as
can I also suggest is if you're listening to this, and I know the ones who are live here aren't, but if you're listening to this on demand and you've got a question, you know, we've got a policy at Remarkable Practice that if we get a question from someone, we'll answer it in some way, shape or form. So please feel free to come to us with any questions afterwards. That's
a great idea. I'm going to steal that. You can come to us with any questions as well.
If you want it to Jo and Paul, then send it to both of us. If it's just one of us, then great.
One apology I'll make before we get started, and Paul's aware of this. I've had the broadband has gone down in our building today, so I'm actually running this webinar off my phone at the moment. So I apologise if my sound becomes a little bit delayed, or if it cuts out completely. I will jump straight back on if that happens. But Paul will pick up the reins if I die.
Metaphorically, Jo, hopefully.
Metaphorically.
Yeah.
So let's just a quick introduction before we get started. And I think one of the things that we see is that talent acquisition and talent retention within accountancy firms are probably the two common challenges that we're facing at the moment. And this has really gathered pace. I don't know whether it's due to COVID or since COVID, but more so as the baby boomers retire. And I was just looking at some statistics around this, Paul. Last year, millennials surpassed boomers as the largest generation in the UK labour force, and that was last year only, which was an interesting shift.
Yeah.
But I think what this does is present an opportunity for accountancy firms really to make their practices now really appealing to young professionals. And I don't think that means, you know, having a foosball table in your office or having to worry about job hopping, laziness, or the common myths that sadly surround the millennials. You can attract, retain and groom them, you know, into leaders like any other generation. But I think we have to recognise that they do have some distinct values and interests that, you know, you need to keep in mind. And Deloitte's published a survey recently where they were showing that compensation, very important, obviously, but also the good work-life balance were the most important criteria that millennials look for in a job. And also 1 in 4 millennial employees said they were likely to leave their current employer within the next year, citing lack of work-life balance and flexibility really as major factors.
Right.
So historically, we'll all have been used to recruitment agencies, recruitment companies. So I'm going to throw really first question at you, Paul, in terms of in the work that you're doing, what sort of attitude are you finding firms have towards recruitment companies?
Well, having worked in recruitment, it's probably not a surprise to anyone on this workshop, if you will, that there's a tiny group of people used to treat me as a recruitment consultant with respect. And the vast majority treated me like I was something they'd picked up on their shoe. That's, I think, generally where it came from. We're just a pariah just out there to make money rather than actually, deliver a valuable service in terms of finding a recruiting and helping businesses recruit great people. And if I flip, so I'm going back, that was my first job after I'd finished university. If I now bring it to the current times and go into accounting firms, it's one of the questions I ask firms is what's your attitude towards recruitment companies? And generally you get a rolling of the eyes and go, they just, we've just got to keep writing checks. That's the last people we want to talk to. When actually, like you started this session, Joe, is recruiting and retaining as well, but recruiting high quality people is tough. And actually, why would we look to recruiters as pariahs when actually they can seriously contribute to the future success of the firm? And okay, if we have to write a £5,000 check or an £8,000 check or a £15,000 check, depending on the seniority and therefore the salary of the people we're recruiting, that can be painful. And I appreciate that. And it always looks as though it's like easy money for easy work. But that shouldn't really matter. And what I see is a small handful of firms who build a really good relationship with a recruiter or possibly two. And those firms actually, they don't get me wrong, everyone's finding, it's always tough to find really great people, but the ones who seek out and find recruiters that they build a real relationship with, not a transactional one, a real relationship, so that the recruiter's helping you grow your business, not just recruit for you. Then it's a different game. Recruiters are used to not being abused, but being treated fairly badly. Not badly, but calls aren't returned. They're not treated like you would treat your client, for example. And yet, one client of an accounting firm will not be as valuable as the next great employee you recruit, and therefore, it's I would argue very strongly. And I know some recruiters don't leave the best taste in your mouth, for want of a better metaphor, but actually keep hunting for the recruiters who behave well, do well, and assume and believe they will if you do right by them. And then all of a sudden, you'll have a competitive edge in their hearts and minds for the best people. So guess what? The recruiters who are looked after by their customers, the accounting firms, and are treated with respect, they're the people that the recruiters ring up first when they've got a great candidate.
Yeah.
Aren't they? I mean, it's so obvious. And yet most leaders of most firms would prefer to keep the recruiters at arm's length and recruit them themselves. Now, don't get me wrong. Yeah, we've got to do everything, and I'm sure we'll touch on this, Joe, to recruit ourselves independently of the recruiters, but let's not treat them badly. Let's treat them as a strategic supplier to the firm. Or let's treat them badly so that they don't deliver us a flow of good people.
Yeah.
And I think accountants don't take responsibility for the way they treat the recruiters. And I know they'll be professional on the phone, and I know they'll be professional on the emails, because accountants are nice people and they're always professional. But actually, when they're around the boardroom table or they're having a managers meeting, they won't have too many good things to say about recruiters. And I would suggest you stop that and start believing that they are a strategic resource, a strategic supplier that can change the future success of your firm, because they can. And they do, by the way, they do.
So Paul, in terms of taking that on board, what do you think distinguishes the firms that have no problem recruiting to the firms that have real difficulties? Is it that relationship with the recruiter, or is it a combination of lots of different things?
what distinguishes firms who have no problem recruiting? I think it's more than that. It's, the recruiters are a strategic resource, and we should look at them that way, and where we can work with them with respect and so on. But I think there's something more strategic at play here. Well, let me pose this question back to you, Joe. When do most firms, not the larger firms, but when do most firms want to recruit?
When they have an immediate need and a vacancy. Yeah.
So someone leaves and they now need to recruit.
Yeah.
Whereas if you look at KPMG or Deloitte or a large regional firm, when are they recruiting?
All the time.
All the time. And so what distinguishes whether you're a small startup, and I'm working with a well-funded small startup firm at the moment, and they've gone, what are the key pillars of a successful firm, Paul? Because they're using us as advisors, and they're going to always be recruiting. Yeah, but we're only a 2-person startup. Yeah, but do you know who your first employees are? Yeah, well, we've got 3 people in mind. Are you talking to them? Not yet. We're not ready. Perhaps a cup of coffee might be a good idea if you know who they are.
Yeah.
And so I think you've got to bring the always be recruiting piece into the mix. Yeah, but we don't always have a space. Yeah, but and you're the marketing expert, Joe, and I'll I'd like you to expand on this one if you would. So the question that answers the question you've just posed me, is it easier to generate leads for new clients, or is it easier to market and generate new employees through the door?
That's a good one, actually. And I think it's actually easier to market for new leads than it is for talent at the moment, without question.
Yeah. I
think one of the things that we, I guess, really push with our clients is this continual recruitment message, for sure. We're always recruiting, we're always looking for good people. And that's something that you can display constantly on your website, for example. Just in its very simplest form. But I think that's an important message, and using all of your marketing channels to get that message consistently over is really important. So it's not just your website; it should be your social media channels, and any opportunity that marketing presents itself to say we're a great company to work for. Why not come and talk to us? Yeah, is a big part of marketing now. Well, we have found that the website probably is the first place that candidates are likely to go and learn more about, your firm, really determine if it's a good fit for them.
I agree. It's the shop window for the firm, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think they're not going there to look for specific positions either. What they're often going to your website for is to gain a better understanding of your culture and what it's like to work within your firm. And I think what practices have to recognise now is that your website needs to reflect a place where employees are encouraged to learn and grow. Make sure that your recruitment pages display your brand, convey your key messages that offer that effective centerpiece for that talent acquisition. And then, of course, you can optimize it. So, if somebody is searching for a position, we want to drive them to your recruitment page. So your website becomes your key tool here for that consistent recruitment message.
I agree, and you've hinted at a couple of things there in terms of the messages potential hires need to hear, and I think you mentioned the word culture. What exactly do you mean, Joe, in terms of how does a team webpage or a recruitment webpage actually show the culture of the firm? What does that actually mean?
Okay, can I show you an example?
Yeah.
So,
I hate the word culture. I love a healthy culture in a business, but the word culture means, what does it mean?
Okay, so let's just get this where I can see it properly. So I'm hoping you can see the Grunberg webpage here. Yep.
Yeah, I'm just pulling it onto my desktop. Right, yeah, I've got it.
Okay. So I've just gone straight onto there. I'm just going to go scroll to the top. So I've gone straight onto their work for us page. Yeah.
Right.
So they give you the choice when you get onto the web page of viewing the current vacancies, or if you're a school leaver or graduate. Yeah. So they take you down a different path dependent. If you go down the school leavers and graduates route, they've got lots of nice videos on there showing, chats with school leavers and graduates that have gone to work for them and so on. So that's a really nice tool to have on there.
Yeah.
If you're going for the more senior positions, then again, I'll just make my way down this web page. So the first message that they come up with is why work for us? And sorry, Paul, I have used the word course.
No, very good.
But the focus on developing great staff, delivering exceptional service, okay. But they've also gone in for some employment awards, and I'll come back to this. But
credibility.
This has actually made a difference to their recruitment strategy. The fact that they've been recognised as a good place to work. They then talk about how they support their staff. So they're an ACA training firm, and they'll go through different ways in which they support. Then we go on to the important stuff, the benefits. So the fact that they will offer staff paid volunteering days, they've got complete agile working here. Private medical cover, etc., etc. So that's kind of the what's in it for me. We then focus on things like well-being. So they take the fact that they've got access to private GPs. They take mental health awareness very importantly. And it's not until we get past this kind of, the CSR message and the well-being message that we start talking about what's this business about, so what's our turnover? Are we a growing firm? And then demonstrating, partners being promoted internally, managers promoted internally. Split between male and female, how many people are there part-time? So
they're getting a feel through the numbers, aren't they, for what the firm's about?
Exactly. And I think this kind of window into what the firm is all about, makes a big difference, because it's not just a web page that says, right, at the moment we've got a position available for an audit senior, and that's it. There's nothing else there. So that's a sort of example of that window of telling people what you're all about.
And by definition, therefore, giving people a feel for the culture of the firm. I think if you asked me the question around culture, I'd be going to, how clear are the beliefs, values and behaviours that you hold dear? How clear is that in the firm? And things like things like, that sounds a bit glib, this is like deadly important, is what's the core purpose of your accounting firm? Why are we here? And I know it's a big, leery, hairy, audacious question, but it's I've literally got off a call to the managing director of a firm, and they've got absolute crystal clarity on what their core purpose is. No, it's not about making money. And he's not giving me permission to talk his particular purpose, so I'm not going to break confidence now. But it's you can go onto accountancy website after accountancy website, and occasionally you'll come across a tagline, which is just a tagline, as opposed to there's a handful of firms who have turned that tagline, or rather, the tagline is a consequence of something everyone feels involved in. They've bought into a sense of meaning. And I think that particularly, I think, with the millennials, now I'm not a millennial, so I can't really say that, but the research into millennials is, and there's a large firm we work with, and they've got, I was talking to the head of audit, and he was saying it's almost as if we're getting interviewed, not the candidates. And they're going, so what's the core purpose? What are the core values? What's the vision of the business? And thankfully, this firm's got those things worked out. And so they tick those boxes and maybe stand a chance of recruiting this audit senior or this audit manager or this RI, indeed, in one of the interviews. But that requires background work even before you get anywhere near the web page, which proves and demonstrates that you're worth applying to. And I think that's, people will throw an advert up, but it doesn't prove that you're worth applying to. And I've got an issue there as well in terms of the series of stages you've got to go through. So hopefully we'll touch on that, Joe, because I did quite a bit of work in that marketing space for candidates when I was back in the day, and it's still as relevant now as it was then. So there's some strategic background. If I do a quick slide share, Joe, just to put that into some sort of context, bear with me a second and I'll pull that up. It's not there. I'll tell you what, I'll bring that up later because it'd be relevant to a conversation later. I've got that many things open now on this desktop. So the point being is, yes, work really hard. In fact, based on your comments earlier, work harder on the web page, which is recruiting people, than you do on the web pages that are recruiting new clients or keeping your existing clients for that matter. Yeah. Because in that space of, are we doing enough to keep our people? Are we doing enough, therefore, to earn the right to recruit people? That's how I see it. You've got to earn the right. Well, where do you do that? On a brilliant web page with crystal clear messaging, both about the people stuff and the numbers stuff, which the Grunberg website, and I've been into Grunberg, they're really nice people. You're doing that brilliantly. And then there's like, well, where's the firm going? What does the firm stand for? Adds another layer, which is really important to the millennials. And I've got 4 of them as children. Well, are they? I get confused in terms of millennials and the Gen Zs before that. But it's, they're like, well, I'm not working for that firm because they don't treat their team well enough. I'm not working for that firm because they're not taking the environment well seriously enough. And they've got an agenda, and they need to find that, you talked about the things that matter to these people. Yeah. We've got to earn the right to get them to want to contact us, whether it by email or phone or social media, to see whether we're worthy of them.
So, Paul, you touched on something there which is interesting. How important, from the work that you're doing with firms, how important do you think the CSR messages, the sustainability message, the green message? Do firms pay enough attention to that, do you think? No. Is it becoming more important?
Yes, it is becoming more important, and most firms aren't taking it seriously enough. Don't get me wrong, firms are, I see quite a number of firms dealing with it, but they're not talking about it. And then there are other firms who are just getting on and aren't really dealing with it, and therefore they can't talk about it. Yeah. But I think it's one of the boxes the firms have to tick. There's I received, I'll tell this story, which is connected to this. I received some cans of beer from Brewdog on Saturday, and in the box there was a little badge, one of them lapel badges from Brewdog, and I got this beer because I bought shares in Brewdog earlier this year.
Okay.
Because they were. And the reason I bought shares is because they say they've got a carbon negative brewery and they want to make it more and more carbon negative. So every time you drink a Brewdog beer, a tree goes up somewhere. You go, oh, that's good. However, and they had, back then, they had a website, and I checked the values out because they had a values page, and that read brilliantly. So I bought my shares, and then about 2 days or 3 days later, all hell broke loose in the press about them receiving an open letter from a whole bunch of ex-employees about how badly they'd been treated, which was entirely contradictory to the values that they stated. Now, if you go on the Brewdog website now, there's no values page.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
So how do I feel as a shareholder in Brewdog with these beers? And what have I done with this pin badge?
Yeah.
Well, they told me it was recyclable, so I've helped them, and I've actually had it recycled because I'm not like, I don't want these shares in Brewdog any longer.
Yeah.
Now that's because I'm passionate to it, but I've got 4 kids. All of them are right. They might leave the lights on before they go to bed, but they're all taking that environmental piece and that social responsibility piece ever more serious than we ever did when we were their age, and we have to take it, and all business owners have to take it deadly serious, in my view.
Yeah, I've been to a few conferences actually over the last month, and I think the one thing that's been really brought home to me is the importance of those, if you like, stamps of or kite marks, whatever you want to call them, that show that you're serious about that message. And I think climate, planet, as much as some of the boomers would like to dismiss it, you just can't, and it's important.
Yeah.
We saw recently a presentation. I was at a conference a couple of weeks ago, and we saw a presentation from the ESG Mark. I don't know if you've come across this, but
No.
it's an interesting website. If you go and have a look at it, I think it's esgmark.co.uk or .com. But you go through an application process, which is free of charge. And it allows the business, this company, to assess just how environmentally and a sustainable practice that you actually run. And if you get through the process and get this kite mark, it's just been interesting to see the firms that did have it were winning some of the recruits where climate change and sustainability and green issues, were just really, really important to them.
There's another one. We looked at the application process for an organisation called B Corp, as in B Corporation, and that's building up a head of steam. And I know there are others in that space, which is just another message. But also, if you look at there's a website. If you Google firms of endearment, just taking that strategic stance, you'll find a whole bunch of organisations. These are big companies who take the core purpose and core values of the business deadly seriously. And the reason to go to their page is to unpick that a little bit. What do they mean by core purpose? What do you mean by values? But look at the financial performance of the businesses. And you go, all right, outstripping these. It's an American website, so it's referencing in the States, of course. So it references the S&P 500, and it's like the performance is in a different league. It's in a different universe almost. And because they've one of them's Patagonia, one of my favorite brands, and they want to save the planet. So it's like, right, well, do you want to buy that coat or that coat? I'll buy the one that's going to save the planet. Thanks very much. Well, I don't think it's any different in a recruitment setting. It's getting more and more, and the way you treat your team, because I hate the word staff, the way you treat your team, they're big sticks. They are is key. As well. Practically, Joe, there's recruiting there's lead generation, of which website, recruitment companies, social media. Where do we go? How do we use social media? If I tell you where I've failed miserably in this space, LinkedIn. Approach a number of people, not me personally, this is working with accountancy firms who've gone, should we be approaching people through LinkedIn? And go, well, it's the number one recruitment website in the world. Let's do something. And we've worked out different approaches, none of which has really worked. And then I know we've placed adverts on LinkedIn and got, an international response, which is a bit of a faff when actually you want to recruit someone who lives up the road and doesn't, the social media piece, it seems as though that should be useful, but is it? And you're a better place to answer that than I am.
Okay, well, I don't think there's any question that social media is the place that a lot of candidates are going to turn to get what they perceive to be honest and accurate information. So, thing to remember with social media is glossy perfection's fallen out of style. You've got to be very true and honest on social media, otherwise your content is just dismissed. I think where I see social media playing here is, we've helped firms recruit by doing a good job of pinning the current vacancies on social media platforms. So we have it as a pinned tweet or a pinned post on LinkedIn. So, we're hiring, come and have a look at what we're all about and so on. I think it's important to cultivate positive engagements on social media. So, and regularly share what get your team to share. So even simple things about, being recognised for whether it's a particular job or being thanked by a client, where an individual within your firm's been thanked by that client, and actually sharing that on social media. Also demonstrating your CSR activity. We've got a lot going on at the moment with firms that are doing the reverse advent calendar, raising funds for the homeless charities local to them. It all goes on social media, and it has a real impact on recruitment, because people see a really human side of your firm. And I think the more that you can do on video as well,
right.
you know. And I go back to the Grunberg example. When you go onto their section where we talk about school leavers and graduates, that's all video. It's all, you know, I joined at 18, I joined at 19, and this is the experience I've had. And if you're able to do video of, you know, if you've got some nice offices, do some videos from around, you know, 360 tours of your office, you know, show what it's like at lunchtime, and you know, show what it's like as a place to work. So I think that's where social media can
must be hard to measure though, Joe, in terms of the impact that has on your ability to recruit. Is that the case, or have you got definitive examples with, you know, clearly demarcated, look, with social media, without social media, we recruit more people that way than we do that way?
Yeah, well, we ask as well. So, you know, when you get candidates coming for interviews, we can't do the, you know, the Alan Sugar, you're fired approach to interviewing anymore. You know, that talent finds you these days. You don't.
Yeah, absolutely. You know? Yeah, you're in the spotlight as the employer. You've got to justify them. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think we always ask the question, you know, what did you think about our social media channels? What did you think about and get real feedback at the interview. And we'll find firms giving us feedback to say, you know, that they love the fact that we're really active on Twitter, or really active on LinkedIn, or really active on Facebook, depending on what it was. They really like the fact that we're, you know, doing a lot for XYZ charity. Simple things like that were making the difference.
Having an impact, right? Okay, so it's a case of having more of a strategic approach to the social media than a specific approach for recruitment, which actually demonstrates, back to your point earlier, that we are serious about building a workplace that's worthy of you and your future career. Because I think that sometimes gets lost, doesn't it? In terms of, you know, firms go out to recruit people for jobs as opposed to recruit them for a career path.
Yeah.
That's I was working with a firm last week actually, and they shared their advert, and they've given me permission to pull it up. So if I do that now, I'll just point, you know, just leads on neatly to that, and just show that it's just simple errors that in the, you know, lead generation of possible candidates that go awry when we even get down to the nitty-gritty detail on the advert. So let me see if I can master the screen share piece this time. Hopefully that's showing up, Joe, is it?
I've got it. Yeah.
All right. So as you can see, this is a long-standing firm, client of ours. We've worked with them for years. And I was speaking to Eleanor, who runs this business, last week. And she said, "What do you think of the advert, Paul?" And I went, "Well, do you want the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, or do you want me to nice?" She said, No, give it me full bore. So go, you know, the headline sort of looks all right. Are you an experienced accountant looking for a new job and a flexible way of working? So tapping into the fact that flexible's good, but actually I said, do people want to join you for a job, or do they want a career and a future? She went, "Oh, right, okay." So she's now modified the advert to swap job for career, because there's more to that than there is, "Oh, I've got a job, thanks."
Yeah.
You know, I don't want another job. I want something more. So there was that, and I said, you know, will you only look at candidates who are ACCA fully qualified, or if you find someone who's on a really fast flight path and is really bright and really capable, would you take them seriously? Went, yeah. So, well, take that bit off then. And, you know, if you've got someone who's worked on CCH and not Iris, and worked on QuickBooks and not Xero, or maybe Sage, are you seriously not going to consider them? So, well, no, we'll look at them. All right, we'll take that line off then.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's the little things that they're not connecting with. Yes, I know that's what you want, but it's actually a little bit more flexible in terms of, actually, it's not what people are capable of doing because of their experiences. It's the type of people they are. That, you know, higher attitude, not skill piece, which is a bit glib, I know, but you go, hang on a second, let's open the hopper a little bit wider, whilst also, you know, having key messages. And then there's something other, which I think is just radically wrong with this advert, which just, as an ex-recruiter through me, which is, you know, if you're interested, send us your CV. Who's doing that anymore? And I know we all want to see the CVs, but what about, if you're interested, go and check our team page on our website. And, you know, there's this, here's a recruitment advert. And what we want is for people to ring us up or to send us the CV. It doesn't work like that.
No.
There's stages, isn't there? There's stages from the start through to them actually showing up for interview one by Zoom. Because they ain't getting in the car or getting on a train to come to interview one anymore. It's by Zoom or Teams or whatever. Yeah. And it's, okay, let's get them to the pages on our website that really matter, and use the pages on the website to then drive them to a call to action that, you know, gets them a recruitment pack by PDF. But at least then we've got their email address, and then we can start them and push them down the pipeline of the marketing pipeline for them coming in for a discussion.
Actually, Paul, that leads me on because I've been watching this new phenomenon of gamification in recruitment.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, this has been really interesting because Google started it off. They took big billboards out in Silicon Valley originally and said, if you can solve this logical, puzzle, you should come and work for us.
Oh, right, clever.
Really clever. So, of course,
you
have to go to a web page to solve the puzzle. And, of course, the web page leads you straight onto their, you know, what it's like to work for us. So, you know, our equivalent of that Grunberg page.
Yeah.
But I noticed GCHQ have started using this gamification tool as well. So on Twitter this morning, they've been putting it out for a while, but I just spotted it because I'd set up an alert for gamification in recruitment.
Oh, well done.
And they've done a screenshot of a piece of computer code, and they've said, if you think you can beat the hackers, tell us what this code says, and then work for us. So they're picking up on this games, puzzles,
set a challenge.
Which has led me, so it's led me now. What challenges could accountancy firms set in their recruitment adverts to try?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Love that. No, you've got me thinking now. See, I went straight to what challenge can you set, and if for everyone who gets it right, we'll plant a tree or we'll do, you know, there's actually an outcome. It's got nothing to do with whether you get in or you choose to come to us, but actually there's a bigger picture driver for actually doing it as well.
It led me to think, you know, if you're trying to attract an audit senior and give them a really difficult audit puzzle of some sort, and if you can solve this, you should work for us or something.
Yeah. So this conversation is a bit like a end-to-end. How do you improve each stage of the end-to-end recruitment process? Lead generation, lead conversion, but from a let's get good people in. And by the way, I know we call this workshop, you know, recruit and retrain. Recruit and retain. I'll get my teeth back in soon, my real teeth. The retain bit comes from earn the right to the recruitment. So that's the starting point, really, in terms of getting all the messaging on social media, messaging on your website, all sorted out, crystal clear, the human stuff, which the Grunberg's website does brilliantly well, as well as the numbers stuff. I would argue very strongly that they'd also want some of the strategic elements to show up, vision, values, core purpose, and how they deliver up, and proof and evidence that they deliver on these things, which was, you know, your point about the the team awards piece. That's key, isn't it, in terms of just nudging people over the line to take the next step? What are your views on that, Joan?
Hugely important, you know. I think that the other piece of the puzzle, when you look at the recruitment process as a whole, is where else do potential recruits go other than your website and other than your social media channels?
Right.
So if they think maybe I should look at this firm, be very aware of the missing piece of the puzzle, which might be review sites.
Are we talking Glassdoor and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, we've got a client at the moment that's struggling because they've got some really negative reviews on Glassdoor. All right. And unfair, completely unfair reviews. And probably from I think it's the same person with 5 different
logins, right? Okay.
Logins, you know.
Yeah.
But the damage that it's doing to their recruitment process is huge.
Yeah.
Even when they get somebody into interview stage, they bring up the fact that they've seen these reviews. When you Google this particular firm, these reviews are coming up before their own.
Wow.
So I think
shows the power of them, doesn't it?
Yeah, Glassdoor, Google reviews, reviews that people could put on Total Jobs and Indeed. You've got to be mindful of your digital footprint, and that to me is a piece of that puzzle.
Yeah, and for me, that is, well, where's the fix with that? It's in the prevention, not the cure, because getting those things shifted is really hard, isn't it?
Yeah, it is difficult.
And if it's in the prevention, then in our experience, my recommendation is you then back to, but what's the behavioral standards, the beliefs, the values that you've got in your business, and you hold people to account. Now, that sounds as though you've actually been quite stern about it. Well, actually, no. It's actually about how do you help people perform to the standards that you want in the business. Plus, by the way, when you're recruiting, you're having conversations from a values perspective to see whether they fit.
Yeah.
If you've got a set of behavioral standards, then you can recruit, you can interview around those behavioral standards to see whether they're a good cultural fit. Yeah. Posted on my own petard there, using the culture word, but they're a good cultural fit.
Yeah. So, Paul, I'm conscious of time, but a couple of minutes. Yeah. Obviously, you've kind of you've been at the sharp end of recruitment. You're also working with firms. If a firm doesn't have a full-time HR resource,
which is most firms,
absolutely.
Yeah.
How much priority should they give to the recruitment process as part of the overall running of the practice on a day-to-day basis? What best advice would you give?
Because we've already touched on the concept of always be recruiting, there's a go, right, well, that says to me every week there's going to be a time investment in that recruit and retain space. So managing director, managing partner, or other partner, someone in the firm is going to invest some time in always be recruiting. Now, the best way to answer it, Joe, is every firm's going to be unique and different in terms of scale and complexity and people issues and all the rest of it. However, every firm can work out whether they should be interviewing someone every month, every fortnight, or every week, or whether they should be interviewing someone twice a week or every day, and that would be a bigger firm. Can you see? You can scale that and contract it to suit. But even a 10-person firm, if they find a qualified or part qualified person who'd been working in a firm for maybe 5 years, and they recruited that person, almost certainly the more senior people in the firm will be able to waterfall work to that person.
Yeah.
And then go and find some more client work, or go and see existing clients and help them buy some additional services, because there's a direct correlation between the number of interactions with the client and the number of services that they deliver and buy. And so I'm trying to sell again the concept of always be recruiting, but just make a decision. Should you be having a Zoom interview like this for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, once a week, once a fortnight, or once a month?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, we're a tiny firm, we should only be interviewing maybe once a quarter. Well, if you only employ a couple of 3 people and you only ever want to have 2 or 3 people in your firm, I might have some sympathy for that. But as soon as you're in double figures in terms of the number of people you've got in your firm, then you should be interviewing someone at least every month.
Yeah.
And so then you track that back and go, well, in that case, I need to have a conversation with the recruiter at least once a month.
Yeah.
At least. And then I need to make sure that we're doing something on social media at least once a week, if not once a day.
Yeah.
And then, and can you see it all backtracks from that? And so you go, right, well, how do we have to make that work? Well, that means I've got to get my website sorted. Yes, it does. But always be recruiting. It pays to invest some time in that.
Yeah.
And so you then go, right, is that an hour a week? Yeah, it is, at least.
Yeah.
It's at least an hour a week. And in some firms, given the circumstances, it could be 1 day a week for a senior person.
Just to add into that, I think what I would say is that, if you're having if you're tasked as a partner or director to have that process running on a constant basis, you need to task your marketing department, agency, person within your firm to back all of that up. And that
correct. I agree.
Every week you should be putting something out on social media that has a recruitment focus on it.
Yeah.
Great place to work, focus on one of our team, focus on CSR, focus on, our latest award winning, the best companies to work for. And your social media plan and should have that as a staple every single week. Monitor your digital footprint. What are people saying about you? Are you a good place to work? Check out those reviews on a regular basis.
Google yourself every week. Absolutely. Yeah.
And just constantly update that recruitment page of your website. Now, what else can we get on there that says, come and choose us? And if that's just a 30-second video from a new recruit that says, I've chosen you because. Perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. Joe, I'm just going to do a quick screen share and then come back. But this, and I've got permission to share this as well, like you did with Grunberg's. This is a firm called Landmark Chartered Accountants in Watford, and they've got a 2-minute 12-second video which is all about the people, but also is showcasing their offices as well.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And I'm zipping through this. There's a 60-foot picture of Wonder Woman in there, but it's gone now because I was there last week.
Wow, this place is amazing.
We don't need to see it, do we? So there's and that could be sliced and diced into snippets, like you were suggesting, and which become more valuable social media wise. So that's Landmark Chartered Accountants in Watford. If anybody wants to have a look at it and see. So, and I know Grunberg's have got videos galore, and it's just get more and more and more evidence, more and more proof, so that you earn the right for someone to press the click on their keyboard or their mouse to go, I want to know more, or I want to take the next step, and make the next step as small as possible, so that it's easy for them to take, which I think is also part of the gamification. And I do like the idea of, what's the puzzle or what's the challenge?
Just a different approach, making you stand out more than above and beyond everybody else. But I do quite like it as a tool, and I think if it can work for Google and it can work for GCHQ, then maybe it can work for accountants as well.
I'm sure it can. I talk about gamification quite a lot in terms of how do you make production workflow, and whether it's tax returns or annual accounts. How do you gamify that? Because it works. Yeah. It really works. But I do think of everything I've covered off today, two things stand out for me. And I'll pose the same question to you. What's the standouts for you, Joe? And then we'll see if we can get any questions in. For me is strategically get your messaging clear, so that when you look to your webpage or you look to your social media, you know what you're talking about. And for me, that's like, where you're taking the firm, what are your core values, beliefs, the behaviors that absolutely are lived in this firm. That's culture. So vision, purpose and values, they're the three things that I think strategically need work on, and they're not easy to work on. We've done quite a lot of that work over the recent years, and it seems as though there's an appetite for more of that now than ever. And I think it's partly because it influences whether you can recruit or not, and then translate that into what's going on every week in your firm, so that you're always recruiting. And I think if you fix those two things, then your firm is going to be in a better place in terms of earning the right to recruit. Joe, of everything between the two of us have covered off today, what do you think stood out the most, been of most value to firms?
I think for me, Paul, it's the point you made at the beginning that you don't see recruitment agencies as the enemy.
Right.
Marketing.
That's a much more eloquent way of putting it than I did, Joe. Yes.
We get constant moans about agencies and for all the obvious reasons, but I think you're quite right. Be the go-to person for your recruitment agency, and I think that's a point I'd missed. But I think secondly, the thing that stands out for me more than anything is to always be recruiting, not to just worry about it when you've got a position to fill. But for me, those are my two takeaways from you, Paul.
I've got this. You said something, and I didn't quite get it, but it rings so true around. And it was when you were talking about social media, and that it's not glossy and something. It's got to be true and honest. Was it?
Yeah, glossy perfection is out of style. You've got to be raw and honest on social
Authentic.
media. Yeah, absolutely authentic. Authentic. Yeah, thank you. That's the word I was looking for. Absolutely authentic. Yeah.
And that the reason I posed the question and wanted clarity on it, because I've not heard that phrase before, which I think is fantastic, is the seeking out the authenticity. So it's one thing to talk about, for example, vision, values, and purpose. But if it's just a tagline and it's just a nice graphic on the wall in the office, that's not authentic. That's just corporate BS. As opposed to actually live them. If you're serious about them, then you will earn the right to recruiting the best people.
And
keeping the best people as well. That's a big part of this. I mean, there's so much to this subject, Joe, and it's hard to actually.
I could chew the fat for hours on this one.
I know. So I think, if there's how should we get questions show up, Joe? I know there's a couple of people putting stuff in the chat.
Yeah, the Q&A is open and the chat's open. If anybody has got any questions they want to ask while we're here, I can see. Claire.
I like Claire's comment.
My kid 10 says he's a Zoomer, someone educated online in lockdown. Yeah. Zoomer. That's hilarious. Yeah, but also the fact that you worked in a Big Four firm and CSR work-life balance was really important. And I think certainly this last couple of months of face-to-face conferences and so on, I can see just how important this is to lots of firms now, and not that it hasn't been, but it's just become more and more important. And maybe that's a result of the last 18 months.
Yeah, Joe, I'm just thinking. I know we at Remarkable Practice for 5 or 6 years now have created a business breakthrough report every couple of months. And we've got one on recruitment, which I'm just looking for. And I just thought, well, if I can put the link up for that, people can go and hunt that out. Because it's what we did is my wife, Kate, she was in recruitment for 6 years. I was in recruitment for 3 years. And we sat down and just pulled out every really interesting little bit about that. Not the lead generation as much as the lead conversion. How do you get all the bits right in the run up? The one thing it needs updating around is Zoom interviews. And it's like, well, and we touched on how many interviews a week or how many interviews a month should your firm be doing. This isn't sit down for 90 minutes. This is get them on a Zoom call for 20 minutes to see whether you know whether you like them, whether you think you can work with them, and whether you think they'll fit in. That's really what that first check-in is about, which we hint at in the we don't hint at, we say that's interview one, but interview one now is on Zoom or Teams or another.
And that's a skill in itself, isn't it? The Zoom interview, it's very different from being face to face with somebody. So maybe there's a training for your interviewers if they're not used to doing that. Yeah.
So I'm just going to put the URL for that in the. If I put this in the chat, will it show up in the recording as well, Jen?
Yeah, it should do. Yep.
Yeah, cool. Yep.
So, Paul, we're running over. So at this point, I'm going to say, if anybody wants to get in touch with you, Paul, how do they reach you? I'm
the only Paul Shrimpling on LinkedIn, and I do visit it every week. I don't visit it every day. It's just so that if you don't, but if you want a more instant response, email paul@remarkablepractice.com, and Kate will pick up on it, and she'll go, oh, here's one, and my team will pick up on it as well. So they will get a response from us.
Okay. And I'll give myself a plug. Yeah. So if you want to get hold of me, we're at je-consulting.co.uk, and you can email me directly, which is jo@je-consulting.co.uk. Happy to take questions at any time. And I'm just laughing at one of the Q&As that's come in, Paul, which is it's anonymous attendee, but having listened to this, it's no wonder we can't recruit. You don't hesitate.
Well, now you can. But it's, and everybody wants to jump to being the perfect recruiter. But actually what it is putting one layer of good stuff in, and then another layer, and just keep layering it in. And don't think you can get to, grade A perfection within a couple of weeks. It doesn't work like that. But it's, strategic thinking and planning and getting your messaging right, get your web pages right, which then influences your social media, and then make sure that everyone that steps over the threshold, you look after really, really well, because you've got to earn the right to recruit. Really got to earn the right. Brilliant. Really good to work with you today, Jo. Thank you.
Pleasure as always, Paul. No, thanks for your time today as well. And thanks for everybody attending. And
brilliant.
We'll share the recording as soon as it's ready.
Marvellous. Thanks, Jo. Well done.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.